which can more accurately be described as the mass sexual assault and rape of white British girls by men from ethnic minority backgrounds. We also know that the state at best turned a blind eye to this sickening abuse, and at worst actively colluded with the grooming gangs to cover it up. We also know that for many years, the absolutely justifiable anger amongst white Britons over this issue has been slowly building. And here we are in the summer of 2025, and white Britons seem to have finally had enough. Spontaneous protests are breaking out all over the UK in response to illegal migrants being housed in hotels, as reports spread of migrants preying upon and sexually assaulting young white girls. And all of a sudden, as a response to frustrated white parents taking to the streets, the police swing into action. For decades, we have been told about police understaffing, budget cuts, and a lack of resources. But within days of white Britons taking to the streets, the police have managed to create an elite unit to monitor social media in order to tackle potential unrest. The Telegraph reported the following:
An elite team of police officers is to monitor social media for anti-migrant sentiment amid fears of summer riots. Detectives will be drawn from forces across the country to take part in a new investigations unit that will flag up early signs of potential civil unrest. The division, assembled by the Home Office, will aim to maximise social media intelligence gathering after police forces were criticised over their response to last year's riots.
And yes, you heard that right. This elite team will be drawn from forces all over the country in a move that seems to be lifted straight from the film Minority Report, where a specialist pre-crime police department is tasked with arresting people before they have even committed an offence. And this is all being directed by the Home Office, the same Home Office that is housing migrants in hotels up and down the country. And of course, these draconian measures are being aided by the government's new Online Safety Act, the most unbelievably misnamed piece of legislation in the history of the UK. This act was of course sold to the public on the basis it would make the internet safer for children. Instead, it is nothing more than a censor's charter. Whilst the Online Safety Act hasn't stopped a single white girl from being groomed or sexually assaulted, it is of course being used to prevent adults from discussing the issue of white girls being groomed, with posts on X now being censored and hidden behind age gates if they as much as mention the issue of white girls being targeted by migrant gangs. So far-reaching is this censorship that it extends as far as to hide posts that feature footage of MPs in Parliament discussing the issue of grooming gangs. I have made a number of videos on the Online Safety Act, explaining exactly how it works and why it is such a threat to free speech. These are linked in the description below. But the news of a new elite police squad tasked with monitoring social media comes hot on the heels of the police admitting that they have been busing radical leftist counter-protesters to anti-migrant demonstrations in order to inflame tensions. Earlier this month, the Telegraph exposed that the police in Epping were purposefully escorting pro-migrant groups to the anti-migrant protests. The Telegraph stated the following:
The pro-migration protest group, escorted by police to a migrant hotel, is partly funded by trade unions and led by Diane Abbott, the suspended Labour MP. Counter-protesters involved in the Epping demonstration were carrying placards for Stand Up to Racism, a group that explicitly opposes Nigel Farage's Reform UK and which is backed by the TUC. Essex police came under fire after footage appeared to show officers escorting the protesters to the Bell Hotel in Epping, Essex on July 17th. Anti-migrant demonstrators went on to claim that their arrival sparked violence between the two opposing groups.
Footage was also released on social media that corroborated these claims. In fact, footage found on social media clearly shows the police not only bringing the pro-migrant protesters toward the anti-migrant demo, but also shows the pro-migrant demonstrators being led away by police, who then use police vans to drive the pro-migrant protesters to safety. It is clear that the police are doing this in order to ensure that trouble flares at these demonstrations, giving the state the chance to both arrest anti-migrant protesters and to clamp down on future protests. What's more, it gives the media the footage they need to demonise the anti-migrant cause. This again highlights collusion between the state, pro-migrant groups, the police and the media in order to both curtail the rights of white Britons and to attempt to spin a narrative harmful to nationalist sentiment. And this wasn't a one-off. The Telegraph has now presented more evidence showing that other police forces elsewhere in the country have been using the same tactics. The Telegraph reported the following.
A second police force has been embroiled in a row over its escorting of anti-racism counter-protesters to a demonstration outside a migrant hotel. Footage shows officers from Hampshire Constabulary walking alongside activists to Potter's International Hotel, a site in Aldershot housing asylum seekers and the location of regular anti-migrant demonstrations. The video, filmed in May, comes after Essex police faced criticism when similar footage showed officers escorting counter-protesters to the Bell Hotel in Epping, Essex, earlier this month.
This appears to be a widely adopted practice intended to ensure that trouble breaks out at anti-migrant demos. This will of course give police a chance to arrest anti-migrant protesters, and then scenes of trouble are then photographed and regurgitated by the media, who then use those scenes to paint anti-migrant protesters as violent, which of course puts off normal people from attending such protests or getting involved in nationalist politics for fear of arrest or injury. All of this effectively proves one thing. Nationalists have been right all along. The media, the police and the state have always been more concerned with white Britons talking about the sexual abuse of white girls by migrant men than they have been about stopping such abuse. It also proves that the police are no longer working to protect and serve the public. The police are not attempting to prevent disorder, but in many cases are attempting to provoke demonstrators into committing violent acts to turn already tense situations into scenes of disorder and chaos. And once disorder does break out, the police can then use force to violently break up protests that the government does not approve of. The police have effectively been transformed into a brutal politicised arm of the state, employed to ensure that the establishment's narrative on multiculturalism and mass immigration is not challenged by the public. The law is no longer there to protect the public, but is instead weaponised to spy upon them and ensure those with the wrong opinions are either quickly apprehended or are provoked into committing acts that will allow the media and the government to demonise the nationalist cause. The British police no longer work for the people. They work to oppress the people. And the people they oppress are white Britons, who for years have suffered thanks to multicultural policies that they never voted for.